Hello Isopod fans, this is Wally Kern with Supreme Isopods bringing you another installment of the Isopod setup reviews. This one is just about perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look.
The Isopod vlog.
Thanks again for joining me and watching this video. People are getting a lot of information from these videos, these Isopod setup reviews, and the people that are sending the information in are getting a lot of information as well. They're making some improvements from the information that I'm providing. If you have an Isopod setup that you'd like me to review, leave a comment below and I'll get right back to you on how you can send me a video on your Isopod setup. And before we get into today's setup, I just want to mention at the end of the setup, I'll go through a review, kind of a summary of how I feel their Isopod setup is doing. That review is going to be based on the colors red, meaning there's something wrong and you will start losing isopods. Orange, meaning there's some things that need to be changed. You're probably not going to get babies. You might lose some isopods. And the color yellow. Yellow means everything looks pretty good, but you're probably not going to get the maximum optimal number of babies from this Isopod setup. This video is from Ray Buchanan, and it's a setup on Armadillidium maculatum, the zebra isopods, one of my favorites. Let's take a look.
Hey there, Wally and friends. Let's rate my zebra enclosure today. Here's my bin. Plenty of ventilation. More ventilation on this side, 3 holes.
I've got to stop right there. I'm checking out that plate of food and I'm kind of getting hungry. I haven't had breakfast today. It's 6:30 in the morning. I've got a lot of stuff to do today. And without breakfast, I'm kind of getting hungry. Should I stop the video here and grab something to eat? I'm going to bear with it and just move on. One thing that I did notice is that the ventilation looks absolutely perfect in this Isopod setup. I don't have any suggestions at all for that. Just looks absolutely perfect. Let's go ahead and move on.
Big piece of wood on top. You see plenty of leaves. See aspen shavings down here.
Okay, we'll stop right there. Again, it's looking great. What I see from this setup is a nice, huge piece of wood. Now, again, this isn't a piece that they'll be eating necessarily, and you want to make sure that you have some decaying wood in there somewhere. But this is a nice hiding place for the isopods. You mentioned the aspen shavings. I don't use aspen shavings in my setups. It's a good wood source, but it'll be a nice place for them to hide, but they probably won't eat much of the aspen shavings, especially if you provide them with a lot of leaves. Speaking of leaves, I noticed that you do have leaves in this setup. I would suggest that you add probably about 2 to 3 times as many leaves as you can. These isopods will just dig into those leaves and devour them. Otherwise, it looks really good. Let's go ahead and move on.
Dirt. There's also some peat moss mixed in. See the little holes the isopods hide in? My little zebras, I like these guys. Flip it over. They're not doing too good. There's only a couple of them.
We're going to stop there. You mentioned that they're not doing good, but it looks like this might be a newer culture. I'm not sure. It might be, 2 or 3 months old. It looks like you have about a dozen in there, so it looks pretty good. When you say that they're not doing good, I guess I would like more information. Are you losing some isopods? Are you just not getting babies? I'd like to know more about that. Again, that piece of wood is a prime golden piece of wood. Looks great. And look at those springtails. They're all over the place. I love springtails as a cleanup crew for the cleanup crew. They'll take care of any additional uneaten food. Just a perfect addition to isopod enclosures. Let's go ahead and keep moving on.
Their substrate is topsoil mixed with Millie Mix, I think. Josh's Frog's Millie Mix.
You mentioned the topsoil is, or you mentioned the substrate is topsoil mixed with the Josh's Frog Millie Mix. I just got a package of this in. I'm really excited about using it. It doesn't have the flake wood, the already decomposed wood, but it has a good source for all the materials that you need for an isopod enclosure right out of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and leave a link for that Millie Mix in the description below. And don't forget, right now we have a 15% coupon off for Josh's Frogs. Anything that you order, make sure that you order in a big order because it's a one-time use only. You get one shot at it, but it's 15%. So I'll leave that link to Josh's Frogs and especially the Millie Mix in the descriptions below. As for moisture, especially with the zebras, they like a good moisture gradient, anywhere from 20 to 30% to be moist, and the rest of the bin to be dry. It's really, really hard for me to tell in these isopod setup reviews if the substrate is really, really moist or just the right amount of moisture. You certainly have, really good areas in here. It looks like you have a moist area, and everything, yes, I did say it. Everything else in the enclosure looks really good. Now, looking at the wood, I can see that part of the wood is dry and part of the wood looks like it's damp. So I'm going to guess that you have a really, really good moisture gradients from dry to wet in here. It might be a little bit too moist. It looks like it might be 50% of the enclosure. You might want to back that off a little bit and keep more of a dry area. Otherwise, it looks really good. Let's keep going.
There's more of them. Let's have a piece of banana. A couple of crumbs of bread.
We're going to stop there. Armadillidiums, the genus Armadillidium for isopods, really like more vegetables, more fruits, especially more vegetables. I would certainly suggest, making sure that you're feeding a lot of vegetables like zucchini or cucumbers or squash or pumpkins. Man, I cannot wait for Halloween this year, and I'm going to grab as many pumpkins as I possibly can. My isopods just love pumpkins. But banana is really, really good as a treat. Make sure that you're feeding some other vegetables. And again, bread is okay. It's obviously a wheat-based, processed wheat-based food. That's really good. But you actually have to have some other foods in there to make it more nutritional. So let's go ahead and take a look.
And some Supreme Chow, Supreme Isopod Chow.
I didn't quite hear what you said there. What food are you feeding?
And some Supreme Chow, Supreme Isopod Chow.
Yeah, that'll work. Let's keep going with the video.
There you go. Have a good one.
Again, this looks like a really, really nice setup. I can't find many things to say about it that you need to improve on. Ventilation looks great. The substrate certainly looks great. The moisture, I would cut down on the moist area just a tiny bit. The foods are obviously really good for the isopods. Are you misting? If you're misting, don't mist. What I found with my isopods, my zebra isopods, especially when I started keeping them, was that they really didn't like to be misted. Especially with that much ventilation, I think that you'll be fine, especially with that moist area. Can't stop saying it. One thing that I would do though is I would add more sphagnum moss. I saw some sphagnum moss in there, but I would put like a handful of sphagnum moss in one of the corners, maybe at one at the ends, the non-heavily ventilated end, and that should provide and maintain that area where they can regulate themselves from the dry area over to the moist area. That's 3. So in summary, I would say this enclosure is green with just maybe a tint of yellow going on. I think eventually you're going to get babies out of this enclosure. I have no doubts. This looks really, really good. You have 10 to 12 animals. Give it another month or 2. I would love to see some feedback on this and find out if you do get babies. If not, we'll go over this whole review again and we'll take a look at it. Thanks for submitting this, Ray. I really appreciate it. And everyone else, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit that notification all. We'll see you next week.